You know that feeling when you think you got everything figured out, when your life is this perfect little ecosystem you built, and everyone around you is playing their part, exactly how you need them to. That was me 6 months ago. Anyway, make sure to hit that like button if you're enjoying this, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new here. I've got so much more to share with you all. I'm Molly, I'm 31, and I just watched my former best friend systematically destroy everything we built together. But here's the thing. He thinks he's the victim in all this. Let me tell you what really happened, because the story he's probably telling makes me sound like some corporate monster, and that's just not the truth. Bradley and I met in college during some random elective about emerging technologies. He was this quiet, intense guy who always sat in the back corner, never spoke unless called on. But when he did, it was always something brilliant that made the professor's eyes light up. I was drawn to that energy, not romantically. God no, Bradley was way too cerebral for my taste, but intellectually, the guy was a goldmine. We bonded over late-night conversations about data visualization and how clunky all the existing platforms were. I had the vision. I could see exactly what businesses needed, what would make their lives easier, what would make them throw money at us. Bradley had the technical skills to make it happen. It was perfect synergy, or so I thought. When I pitched him the idea for Aperture, I knew I was offering him something he'd never get anywhere else. A real partnership with someone who understood the business side. Most tech guys, they're brilliant with code, but they have zero clue how to talk to investors, how to present ideas, how to make people believe in something that doesn't exist yet. That was my superpower. I put in my life savings, $30,000 I'd scraped together from years of working in corporate consulting. Bradley matched it, and we were off. Those first 18 months were incredible. We were working 16-hour days, living off energy drinks and takeout, but we were building something real. The platform was elegant, intuitive, everything those bloated enterprise solutions weren't. Bradley was in his element, coding like a man possessed. And I was doing what I do best, networking, pitching, getting people excited about our vision. We complemented each other perfectly. When potential clients would get overwhelmed by the technical aspects, I'd translate Bradley's genius into language they could understand. When I'd promise features we didn't have yet, Bradley would somehow make them happen. The breakthrough came when we landed our first major client, a mid-sized logistics company that was drowning in data they couldn't make sense of. Our platform transformed their entire operation. Suddenly, we had a case study, testimonials, and most importantly, recurring revenue. That's when I knew we were ready for the big leagues. I started reaching out to VCs, preparing pitch decks, getting us in front of the right people. Bradley preferred to stay in the background. He said he trusted me to handle the business side while he focused on the product. At the time, I thought that division of labor made perfect sense. But looking back, I think that's where things started to shift. I was the face of the company, the one investors remembered, the one getting quoted in trade publications. Bradley was brilliant, but brilliance doesn't mean much if no one knows about it. I was the one making sure people knew about it. The problem started small, like they always do. Little things that seemed insignificant at the time, but were actually warning signs of what was coming. It began with the press coverage. When TechCrunch wrote about us, they focused on the visionary CEO angle. My story, my background, my vision for disrupting the data visualization space. Bradley got mentioned as co-founder and CTO, but the article was really about me and the company's direction. I remember Bradley reading it at his desk, his jaw getting tighter with every paragraph. When he finished, he just looked at me and said, "Interesting how they made it sound like this was all your idea." I laughed it off. Come on, you know how journalists are. They need a narrative, a face to put on the story. We're a team, everyone knows that. But he didn't laugh. He just turned back to his screen and kept coding. Then there was the investor meeting where I accidentally said my algorithm instead of our algorithm when describing our core technology. It was a slip of the tongue. I was nervous trying to impress these people who held our future in their hands. But Bradley heard it, and I could see something change in his expression. Your algorithm, Guy, he asked me later when we were alone. You know what I meant. I was just trying to keep the presentation flowing. Right, flowing. The thing is, I was doing all the heavy lifting on the business side, while Bradley got to focus on the fun stuff, the coding, the problem solving, the pure technical challenges. I was dealing with lawyers, accountants, investors, marketing, sales, customer service. I was working just as hard as he was, maybe harder, but in ways that weren't as visible. So when I started getting more recognition, when my name started appearing first in articles, when investors wanted to talk to me instead of him, I didn't think that was unfair. I was the one putting myself out there, taking the risks, making the connections that were going to make us both rich. Bradley seemed to retreat more into his code. He'd spend entire days without saying more than a few words to me. When I tried to include him in strategy discussions, he'd just shrug and say, "You're the CEO, you decide." That should have been my first clue that he was building resentment. But I was so focused on growing the company, on chasing that Series A funding, that would change everything, that I missed the signs. The real tension started when I began talking about bringing in additional leadership. We were growing fast, and I knew we needed more structure, more professional management. I floated the idea of hiring a chief strategy officer, someone with experience scaling tech companies. Bradley's response was immediate and sharp. "We don't need more chiefs, we need more developers." "We need strategic guidance," I countered. "Someone who's been through this before, who knows how to navigate the challenges we're going to face." "What challenges? We build good software, we serve our customers, we grow. It's not that complicated." That's when I realized how naive Bradley really was about business. He thought success was just about having the best product, but that's not how the world works. You need connections, you need strategy, you need people who understand markets and competition and positioning. Everything changed when I met Rowan at a venture capital networking event. He was everything Bradley wasn't. Polished, connected, charismatic. He'd been a strategy consultant before moving into the startup world, and he had this way of talking about business that made everything sound so clear and achievable. We got to talking about Aperture, and Rowan immediately grasped the potential in ways that even some of our investors hadn't. He saw opportunities for expansion, for partnerships, for scaling, that I'd been thinking about but hadn't been able to articulate. "You've built something incredible," he told me over drinks after the event. "But you're thinking too small. This isn't just a data visualization tool. This is a platform that could transform how businesses understand themselves." For the first time in months, I felt like someone really understood what I was trying to build. Bradley was brilliant with the technical side, but he couldn't see the bigger picture. He was content to just keep adding features and serving our existing customers. Rowan could see the empire we could build. We could. I started meeting with Rowan, regularly picking his brain about strategy, about scaling, about the challenges we'd face as we grew. He had insights about market positioning, about competitive threats, about investor relations that were incredibly valuable. When I mentioned these conversations to Bradley, his reaction was immediate and negative. "Who is this guy? What's his background with data visualization? He doesn't need to be a technical expert. He understands business strategy. Our business is building software. If he doesn't understand software, how can he understand our business?" I tried to explain that we needed different perspectives, that successful companies brought in outside expertise, but Bradley just got more resistant. He started making snide comments about business consultants who've never built anything, and people who think they can optimize what they don't understand. It was frustrating because I could see how much Rowan could help us, but Bradley was too territorial to recognize it. He saw Rowan as a threat instead of an opportunity. The breaking point came during a strategy session where I'd invited Rowan to join us. We were discussing our roadmap for the next year, and Rowan suggested we pivot slightly to focus more on enterprise clients rather than mid-market companies. "The revenue per customer is so much higher," Rowan explained. "And once you're embedded in an enterprise environment, the switching costs are enormous. It's much more defensible." It made perfect sense to me, but Bradley immediately pushed back. "Our current customers love the product because it's accessible. If we make it more complex for enterprise users, we lose what makes us special." "You can have different tiers," Rowan said, patiently. "Keep the simple version for smaller clients, but build enterprise features for the big accounts." That's feature bloat. It's how good products become mediocre products. The argument went on for an hour, with Bradley shooting down every suggestion Rowan made. It was embarrassing. Here was someone trying to help us grow, and Bradley was acting like a territorial child. After Rowan left, I confronted Bradley about his attitude. "What was that about? He's trying to help us. He's trying to turn our product into something it's not. He doesn't understand what we've built. He understands business better than either of us. Maybe we should listen." "I understand our business. I built it. We built it together, and now we need help taking it to the next level." That's when Bradley said something that really hurt. "Maybe you need help. I'm fine with what we have." The Series A funding process was the final test of our partnership, and Bradley failed it spectacularly. Kylie's firm was interested, very interested. They saw the same potential in Aperture that I did. But during the due diligence process, some concerning patterns emerged. The investors wanted to understand our technical roadmap, our scalability plans, our competitive positioning. These were reasonable questions that any serious VC would ask, but Bradley's responses were problematic. When they asked about our plans for handling enterprise-level data loads, Bradley gave them a 20-minute technical explanation that nobody in the room could follow. When they asked about competitive threats, he dismissed them entirely, saying our technology was superior, so competition didn't matter. Most damaging was when they asked about leadership structure and succession planning. Bradley actually said, "I don't understand the question. We built this. Why would we need succession planning?" Owaki. I could see Kylie and her partners exchanging glances. These were sophisticated investors who'd seen hundreds of startups, and they knew the difference between founders who could scale and founders who couldn't. After that meeting, Kylie pulled me aside. "Molly, you've built something impressive, but I'm concerned about the technical leadership. Bradley seems brilliant, but he doesn't seem to understand the business realities of scaling a company." "He's very focused on the product," I said, trying to defend him. "That's valuable, but you need leadership that can think strategically about growth, about market positioning, about building a sustainable business. Right now, it feels like you're carrying that entire burden yourself." She was right. I had been carrying that burden, and it was exhausting. Every investor meeting, every strategic decision, every difficult conversation. It all fell on me, while Bradley retreated into his code. That night, I had a long conversation with Rowan about the situation. He'd been watching our struggles, and he had some hard truths to share. "Molly, you're trying to drag Bradley into a future he doesn't want. He's comfortable being a small company CTO, but you're building something that needs real leadership. He's my partner. We started this together, and you've grown beyond what you started. That's not betrayal. That's success. But success requires making difficult decisions." Rowan laid out a proposal that made perfect sense from a business perspective. He would come on as chief strategy officer, bringing his experience and connections. We would restructure the technical team with Bradley in a senior developer role, but with new leadership that understood enterprise software development. Bradley gets to keep doing what he loves, building great software. But he doesn't have to carry responsibilities he's not suited for. Everyone wins. The more I thought about it, the more sense it made. Bradley had never wanted the business responsibilities anyway. He'd be happier focusing purely on technical challenges without having to worry about investors' strategy or scaling issues. I spent weeks trying to figure out how to present this to Bradley in a way he'd understand. But every conversation we had about the company's future just reinforced how different our visions were. Finally, I realized I had to make a decision. I could keep trying to force a partnership that wasn't working, or I could make the changes necessary to reach our potential. The termination wasn't personal. It was business. I offered Bradley a generous severance package well above his initial investment, plus consulting opportunities, if he wanted to stay involved with the technical side. I chose that restaurant because it was public, professional, neutral. I thought having the conversation in a business setting would help Bradley understand that this was a business decision, not a personal one. But his reaction showed me that he'd never understood the distinction. What Bradley did next was the most vindictive, destructive thing I've ever experienced in business. And the worst part is he convinced himself he was the victim. Instead of signing the termination agreement like a professional, he just walked away. Left it sitting on the table like some kind of dramatic statement. I should have known then that he was planning something. The first sign of trouble came 3 days later when my lawyer called. "Molly, we've received a letter from Bradley's attorney. He's claiming breach of fiduciary duty and demanding reinstatement as CTO. That's ridiculous. We offered him a generous package." The letter also mentions concerns about material changes being withheld from investors. What does that mean? My stomach dropped. Bradley was threatening to sabotage our funding round. I tried calling him, but he wouldn't answer. I sent emails explaining that this was just a restructuring, that we could work something out, but he ignored everything. Then came the investor email. Bradley sent Kylie a message the morning of our signing, claiming he'd been terminated without cause, and that he could no longer stand behind the technical roadmap. It was a calculated move designed to destroy our funding at the last possible moment. Kylie's firm immediately put everything on hold pending a full review of the leadership situation. When I confronted Bradley about it, he had the audacity to act like he was just being transparent. I made sure they had all the relevant information. He said like he was doing everyone a favor. "You sabotaged our funding round." I protected the investors from being misled about material changes to the company. The legal language, the careful phrasing. It was clear he'd been planning this for weeks, maybe months. While I'd been trying to figure out how to handle our partnership issues professionally, he'd been preparing for war. But that was just the beginning. Over the next few months, Bradley launched a systematic campaign to destroy everything we'd built. He started with the technical infrastructure. As someone who'd built our entire platform, he knew exactly where the weak points were. Suddenly, we were experiencing performance issues, system crashes, mysterious bugs that our new technical team couldn't diagnose. It took us weeks to realize what was happening. Bradley was using our own free trial system to flood our servers with complex queries designed to overwhelm our processing capacity. It was technically legal. He was just a customer using our product, but it was clearly malicious. Our biggest clients started complaining about performance issues. Our reputation in the market began to suffer. And all the while, Bradley was playing innocent, claiming he was just stress testing our platform as a concerned former founder. The final blow came when our largest client pulled their contract, citing the performance issues. That triggered a default clause in our bridge loan from the emergency funding we'd secured after losing the Series A. The vulture fund that had given us that loan immediately called it in. They wanted the IP, the code, everything. Rowan saw the writing on the wall and cleared out his desk without even saying goodbye. Typical. That's when Bradley made his move. He somehow acquired our IP through some shell company for a fraction of its value. The same technology I'd helped envision, the same platform I'd spent 2 years of my life building and promoting. 3 weeks ago, I got an email from Kylie. Subject line, Phoenix New Investment Opportunity. Bradley had renamed our company and was back in business with our technology, with our clients, with everything we'd built together. The truth is, I'm furious. Not just at Bradley, but at how naive I was. I thought I was making smart business decisions, bringing in the right people, positioning us for growth. Instead, I played right into his hands. Look, maybe I could have handled things differently. Maybe I should have communicated better with Bradley about my vision for the company. Maybe I should have seen that he was never going to be comfortable with the changes we needed to make. But what he did, the systematic destruction, the legal manipulation, the calculated theft of everything we built together, that wasn't justice. That was revenge. And it cost me everything I'd worked for. I'm 31 years old, I'm starting over from nothing, and my former best friend is running a company built on technology I helped create. The worst part, he's probably sleeping great at night, convinced he's the hero of this story. Between us, I wanted to scream when I saw that Phoenix announcement, but screaming won't get me my company back. Nothing will.